Say hello and welcome to another live session. And it's about the quest to freedom. And I assume, usually my recordings are like 1 hour long. I haven't really done this a lot. So it's also a new experience for me. But what I want to talk about is the quest to freedom. Like, how can you become more free and literally do what you want? But connected to that are, of course, a lot of things. Of course, like, what is trapping you? And how can you work with that? Because if you see your fears as something that stops you, then you will never be able to outlive that. You know, I see a lot of people that are afraid and that say, I'm afraid because I have a reason to be afraid. That means you will always be afraid. But if you say, I acknowledge that there are things that scare me, and then, what then, right? I mean, that's the first step, that you acknowledge that you are afraid. Because most people, they deny that. If you say to them, well, I can see that you're scared, and then they say, but I'm not scared. Because they try to be like overly proud or cool or whatever they try to be. But ultimately, it's what's keeping them trapped. Their own pride. Their, I'm good the way I am. That's like talking from a high place. What you want to do is you want to humble yourself to acknowledge that somehow you need help. And maybe you don't know how to help yourself yet. So who can help you? Well, life. Right? You let life sort you out. But that means you have to listen to what life is trying to tell you. It's like saying, hey, listen to that guy, Christopher. He seems a bit crazy, but, whatever he's saying, there might be something to it. Then you're like, oh my God, can I really listen to that guy? I mean, he has a beard. Shouldn't he be clean shaven? Shouldn't he do something else? But he's talking about spiritual stuff. Can I really open up to something like this? Aren't my friends going to laugh at me, or my family? Are they going to send me away? Well, then let them. Let them send you away, because you are on your way to a better life. Better for you. Because you cannot force anyone to do what you want to do. And that's then the other thing that a lot of people try to do. They want to get you to do what they want to do, right? It's like the father that could never be a doctor wants his child to go and study medicine. And then the child thinks it has to do that because it wants the father to love him or her. But that's a dead end, of course. That is, of course, a dead end. And the trouble that I have with most people is that they are so afraid to face what scares them that they just do nothing. They just let it all slide. And for me, for instance, I just keep going back to that because that's my quest at the moment. To keep putting content out there to an audience that has the attention span, of a lizard or something. And I think a lizard actually has a better attention span because a lizard can sit on a rock for hours and wait till prey comes. I mean, lizards are really good at relaxing and just sunbathing, sitting around motionless like this. I cannot do this. As soon as I sit down and do nothing, I start biting my fingernails like. But it's also because, I want to move on. I want to let go. I want to move into the future. And the reason why I often sit down and watch movies, or I sit down and try to do something else, is because, I feel weak. But what is actually weakening me is my weakness. And the only way I can get rid of my weakness is by building up strength. That's why I do this dancing or these exercises where I move a lot on all fours, because I want to train my body. And at the moment I want to stay inside because I just don't feel like leaving the house. I want to be in here because in here I can be creative and nobody can say shit to that. And I've said that already as well, but I'm probably going to repeat that because it's important to learn to be alone in your own space. Because, look at, what do we know about heroes? What do you know about heroes? What do you know about the quest and slaying dragons? Well, usually, look at movies like Shrek. Right? So you have Shrek, who is the hero, but he actually doesn't want to be a hero. He just wants to be left alone. So he tries to be really angry, but then suddenly people start to realize that he's actually not a threat at all. And the first to realize that is Donkey. And then he has this annoying donkey that's following him around for the whole quest and is sabotaging the time that he actually later wants to spend with Princess Fiona, right? Who wasn't so much a princess, but more like, rah! Yeah, so... Right, the quest that I'm imagining is me without an annoying donkey to piss me off all the time. Because I have better things to do than to spend my days with some kind of donkey. That's just how I see it, and that sounds, sometimes, I feel like a bit of an asshole. I cannot help that. Because I'm very, most of the time I'm quite determined, and I'm quite focused. This is where I want to get to. This is my mission. I want to create content, so I have to keep going. I have to talk about things. I have to move, right? I have to do things. But every time I stop, I feel exhausted, yeah? And that's just then for me a reason to stop. And then I think, oh, now I can watch a movie, or I can eat something, or I can relax because now I've done enough. But then I realize I haven't done enough because I'm still in the same place. So when have you done enough? Well, when you are somewhere else. When you have moved on, then you've done enough. You look at people like Wim Hof, he's like a real world hero because he brought the message to the entire world that you can heal your body with cold therapy. And to get to that point, he had to work himself through so much shit, and he was alone and alone and alone. And at one point, people started to help him. But at first, he was like laughed at and, they made him do all kinds of things. They ridiculed him kind of. They made him look a bit like a clown. Because that's what happens. If you try to do something else than the rest of them, they will all start picking on you. They will say, oh, he's not good. It's like to that rapper NF, Nate Feuerstein or something. Nobody wanted to acknowledge him. And they still don't really. And why? Because he's really good. And if you're really good at something, other rappers will not say you're really good. You have to know that yourself. How much did Eminem have to do until people acknowledged him? A lot of stuff. So whatever your quest is, you cannot leave it to other people to see your potential. They might sometimes tell you, but they will never truly believe in you. It depends on, of course, your surroundings, but I never had anyone that really believed in me. Some people, they did encourage me to do things, but when it came to it, that I actually wanted to do them, they wanted me to stop doing them. So they always said, oh yeah, you're really good at this and you're really good at that. But when I wanted to just do my own thing, they always said, no, you can't do that. You have to do it different. You have to do it like I did it. And I think, why? Because I'm doing it my way. So why are you trying to control me now? Because if they see somebody and they have the feeling, oh my God, I think this person might be better at what he might do than I am at what I do. And then that hurts their feelings because they feel mediocre. They feel like, I can't do this. And then they try to push you down, right? They try to smother you. It's like a mother that's trying to keep you from getting, from growing, because she wants you to be her little baby that she can cradle all the time because it gives her something to do. And that's the challenge for a mother. She needs to learn to love herself first, before having a child. Because if she does not love herself before she becomes a mother, she will use the child to fill her own holes, to fill her own emptiness. Because a child is a being of light. It's like, not always, but mostly it's not being defiled by this kind of world, right? It doesn't have many dark experiences, and they're kind of soft and cute and you can kiss them and they can't do anything about that. They basically cannot defend themselves. But if they have a need, they cry. That's the only way that most people know how children or babies communicate. So a child either laughs or cries. Anyway, stick with the quest, right? We are talking about the quest. So I was just watching a bit of that movie called Onward. And my God, there's that protagonist, they have two protagonists and they're brothers. And one of them is this really sturdy guy, which is a bit more like Shrek, right? He just does his own thing and he's actually really cool. But everybody thinks he's a screw up because he talks about magic and all that kind of stuff, and everybody thinks he's a good for nothing. That's my experience. People always gave me the feeling that I wasn't good at anything because nobody ever trusted me with anything. And I had a really hard time to outgrow this. So I first had to prove to myself what I actually can do. And when I realized what I can do, people still tried me to stop doing it, to try me to get me to stop doing it. Even people that said they were my friends. You just have to get that into your head. There are no friends if you want to get somewhere, if you want to outgrow yourself. That means you have to leave a lot of people behind. Because once you start going, you will have to find your own pace. And my pace is really fast. I leave everything behind me. I have said to friends, never call me again. If they still did, I just blocked them. Because I didn't want to spend my days, exchanging problems anymore. I did not want to spend my days talking on the phone for hours with male friends. Because I wanted to work towards being a father, having a wife, and children together, and making a living. So I had to become a bit more serious about my own life. And I started to push people out. And there's, at the moment, I would say only one person left that I frequently spend time with, but because I have the feeling we actually, we get along quite well. We have some kind of respect for each other, and we know how to communicate, and we like similar things. That's one person. One person that I would say is actually a friend, that doesn't always try to push me down, that also listens to me when I talk. With everybody else, I always had to really fight to get their attention, because they thought, oh yeah, he cannot tell me anything. And that's from people that were like obese, that had huge problems in their life, that had trouble being alone, and these people tried to tell me what was wrong in my life. So I just stopped hanging out with them, because there was a lot of them, a lot of these people. They go around and they say, yeah, gluten is really bad, but they don't have the balls to stop eating it. So I realized at one stage, okay, I think I am quite different. I'm not like the rest of them, because they just sit around and they talk. They say something about the environment, but they don't really do anything with that. They just say that because they like complaining. And I didn't want to do that anymore. I didn't just want to sit around and complain all day. And I didn't want to talk to people that complain all day either. And why is that? Because I've tried speaking to people who are only complaining the whole day. And when they had a negative thought, I turned it around into a positive one. And then for a second they said, oh yeah, that's true, but... Right, there was this one incident, I was talking to somebody about money. Yeah, but only the bad people have a lot of money. Yeah, and that's why we need a lot of money, so that we can start changing something. Because in this world, we need money to bring about change, because we need to buy properties, we need to buy forests, we need to buy land. We need to buy it so that large corporations that just want to burn it all down and make farmland out of it cannot have it. So we have to buy it first. We have to buy land and properties and all kinds of things so that we can start settlements, communes and stuff like this, right? So that we can start coming together with humans that actually want to grow spiritually. And the word spirituality has the word ritual in it. And now you have to understand, this is a hero journey in itself. To go out there and do something that none of the people in your surroundings have dared to do, which is to leave the herd. That is basically the quest. The quest for what? Not everybody has a quest. Some people, they are born and somehow they just do something. They don't really think about what they're doing. Maybe they just want to earn money. But they don't have these kinds of, you can call them rigid ideals. Because I have certain ideals, and these ideals are really, really rigid. And I will not betray these ideals. And these ideals are things like, I don't want to work for corrupt people, because I actually start hating myself if I do this. Because if I work for somebody who's corrupt, like when I worked in that cinema and was feeding children poisonous junk food, I started getting so angry at myself. I didn't want that anymore. So it was not helping me to get to the place where I wanted to be. Because I worked there because actually I wanted money. Okay, I used that money to buy the action cam, okay? But I also could have kept producing content. But at the time, maybe I needed that. Who knows? So the quest is a lot of guesswork. And now just to come back to that movie, Onward. Right? Sometimes I watch movies to understand what I'm feeling, or to understand um, where I'm going, or to understand what to do next, because it's not always really clear to me. Like, whatever the quest is, whatever spirituality is, whatever sadhana is, it's really, really confusing, because there are so many opinions out there. On what methods to use, how often to use them, when to use them, with who to use them, right? It's like, some people, they think, you have to do a lot of ceremonies, you have to go to an ayahuasca ritual and pay thousands of euros for a weekend. But my experience is these things are not the real deal. It's really hard these days to find people who are genuine. But when you really want to learn, you can work with anything. That's my experience. Because what you have to have is this kind of the warrior mentality. Mentality, right? Let's just assume there is the word man in there. You have to start to think like a man. But what does that mean? Because the role models that we think are men are like people like Elon Musk, who's like the biggest screwer of nature that you can find. And that is not a man, because he's exploiting nature. So in spiritual terms, a man is a person who has grown to be strong and true and honest. He's a fighter. He stands up for those who are weaker, and who he protects his family. Maybe he's a chief, but if you have your own children, then you're a chief in your own family. So you have to learn to protect them from other men. And it's not just, you don't have to run around with an axe, because it's not that kind of violence that you have to face today. The kind of violence that you have to face today is disrespect. Disrespect for life. And disrespect for boundaries. And that sounds really ridiculous. It doesn't sound as appealing as, I'm going to take my tomahawk, right? And I'm going to hunt down deer. Yeah. That's how it used to be, right? You would have long hair and you would ride on a Mustang in the prairie, like woohoo! And then you would have bows and arrows and you would go hunting. And then you would make love to a woman under the full moon. Yeah? And you would pay for that woman with 100 oxen or something, I don't know. But that's how it used to be, right? And then, I don't know if Hercules ever existed, but in that time you would go and, fight dragons with your bare hands. Or lions, I think. There was a story about fighting a mountain lion. So today's hero quest is a little bit different. Today's hero quest is think for yourself and learn to distinguish who's lying and who's telling the truth. That's part of the hero quest. You have to figure out who to trust. So you have to learn to trust yourself, because you cannot trust anybody. In that sense, I'm not really your friend. I'm telling you what I have learned so that you can make your own experiences. But if I would meet you, I'm not going to take you by the hand and then walk you through all these perils, because you have to do that yourself. Like I did it myself, you have to do it yourself. And I did it myself because nobody taught me anything. So I had to learn myself how to do these things. Everything I'm doing, I taught myself. Nobody could teach me this. Because what is a teaching? You have to do it. But nobody could show me how to draw, because nobody I know really drew the way I wanted to draw, maybe. And nobody I knew was writing the kind of books that I started to write. So I started to get going. And that's what the quest is about. You have to start, right? You have to start, but you also have to know what you're facing. Well, you're facing corruption. That's like corruption of the mind that starts in your own mind. But other people that are already very much infected with corruption, it's like greed, fear, anger, it infects the heart. We have a lot of people with heartaches, heart disease. It's because it's like, right? The energy is restricted. So we have to open up. That's why I do a lot of this stuff. Right? To open up my chest. And that's a very, very hard process. Right? So the challenge that we are facing today is not so much I have to live outside and I have to look for food and I have to do this and I have to do that. The challenge we are facing today is to be true to who you are. So you have to find your center. And to find your center, you have to find out what it is that keeps you going. What puts this kind of mad grin in your face? Like, yeah, that's me, man. Go deal with it. Right? So, how can you get this kind of certain intensity, right? That you can look another man in the eyes. Yeah, don't do that. Because it's stupid. You know why? Because other men, if somebody wants a challenge, they might beat you up. Because I'm not that kind of warrior. I'm not a guy who walks around. I have a lot of strength. I can chop a lot of wood. I can climb. I can build things with my hands. I can do crochet, which takes a lot of strength in your hands. Like doing crochet is actually quite strenuous. I'm actually quite gentle. But a lot of people are very aggressive out there. So you have to learn to protect yourself. Because that's part of the journey. That's part of the quest, right? You have to learn to protect yourself against people that are violent and that are weak in their minds and that let all these dark thoughts come in and take a hold of them. Because then they do turn into some kind of dragon. Yeah? But it's not about slaying the dragon in other people. It's about slaying the dragon in yourself. I was spitting fire, like, rah! I was getting angry and angry. I was like, I hate you all, right? I said that once to my family. It was quite a shock to them. It was well deserved, I'm not denying that. Because I had been taking shit from them all my life. And they probably from me as well. I'm not quite sure about this, So sometimes we start feeling really righteous about ourselves and I have a right to be happy. But do you have a right to be happy at the cost of other people's happiness? So do you have the right to go to somebody else and say, I hate you? Because that will hurt that person's feeling. And that in turn hurts your own feelings because actually you don't want to be like that. You actually want to be nice. You want to be in peace. You don't want to walk around like this. Because nobody's really threatening you. Nobody's here to take your life, right? We are not in times of the Vikings anymore. So if you're smart, you probably can get through life without ever getting in a really dangerous situation. You don't have to go to the Congo. You don't have to go to the city center of Johannesburg, right? You can just avoid these places and listen to your feeling. Ask people, where can I go? But then still you might find yourself in situations where maybe you will be threatened with a knife, right? These things might happen. But that's then part of the quest. So you don't know what's around the corner. You don't know what's around the corner. All you can do is just keep going and then figure it out. What do I need to do next? And that brings me back to that movie Because, it's the two brothers. And the younger one is a real pussy. He has no confidence. He's like, oh, I never met my father. It's like, oh, I never met my father. All these things I would like to do with my dad. But your dad is gone, mate. You won't ever do these things. So you can sit around moping, oh, my father. But that's not gonna get you anywhere. Oh, my girlfriend broke up with me. Or my wife doesn't love me. That's like, yeah, I know that one. All these things. I can't do what I want. I was bullied at school. This kind of pussy mentality, it makes me really angry. Because you're just gonna be like this your whole life. You're gonna walk around like your own sob story. Yeah, if that's your quest, good job. And then people will come and, people will get tired of this. They will get tired of it. I got tired of it. I got tired of it in myself, and I got tired of it in other people. So I just stopped talking to most people. Because if somebody's trapped in their own sob story, the only person that can get them out of there is themselves. And I've tried convincing people, believe me. Oh yeah, just look at this and look at that. But as soon as I stopped talking, they would just go back to where they came from. So it was pointless. And so I said, the only way I'm going to do it now is I'm going to create content, and I'm going to put it out in the internet where whoever wants to listen to it can listen to it. But I'm not going to go to people anymore and force them to hear this. Because to them, they're not hearing what I'm saying. And what I'm saying is the quest is to figure out what your purpose is in life. And for that you have books like John Strelicky, you can read that. You can also dive into my own content on medium.com. I have a lot of stories in there. Just read them. Just read them one by one and understand what they're trying to tell you, right? You don't even have to buy a book for that. There's 197, maybe almost 199 or 200 articles on Medium. You can just read that. Because what do you have to do first? You have to understand how a person that has worked himself out of depression thinks. Like, what is my mentality? If you cannot relate to the way I think, then how are you going to do what I try to do? Right? So either you are going to do this yourself, or you have to fill yourself with content of a person that grew out of his depression and learned how to teach himself how to do all these things. Right? So you have to humble yourself, just as I have to humble myself to drink a hot chocolate, because without that, I'm just going to be too tired to talk now. Like, sometimes I wish I wouldn't have to eat, because it's such a challenge for me, right? It's such a challenge to figure out what to eat and when to eat and how often to eat and all that kind of stuff, that I rather would just stop eating. And for some people, it's such a challenge to be happy without ever having had a dad, or without being rich, or without having grown up in a house. Well, everything has positive and negative aspects. You just have to learn to see them. Because you can take my example. I was born into a middle-class family, and all my life I have lived in a house. But I never wanted that, because I wanted to be like, environment, right? Let's do something for the environment. And so I was going to study environmental protection. That's where I said, that was the first choice that I made, where I said I'm going to go study environmental protection. Until that point, most choices were just like, you have to do this. You have to go to school, You know, you have to finish your education, and then what next? I had no idea what I wanted. So I just went to study environmental protection. You know, and that already shows something about me. That's something that I was craving for. Of course, I didn't know I would be doing this with it in the end. You know, I didn't know what I thought. You know, generally you think you're just going to do what everybody else does with it, but I didn't. I did completely different things. I don't have to go into that again, because it's also in my biography on my website, in the About section, or on Medium also in the About section. So I didn't have to do anything anyone ever told me, is what I learned later. I just had to do what I felt like doing. And that's basically what the quest is about. You just have to get going and then figure it out. Okay, let's get back to that movie just one more time. So you have one brother, and he's like that buff, you know, like, let's do it. And then you have that younger brother, and he's like, nothing works. I never met my father. So without the older brother, the younger brother couldn't have started the quest. But without the younger brother, the older brother wouldn't have had a reason to start the quest. So they both needed each other to start on the journey. So if you see it like this, you know, I also have this part in me that's like constantly moping. I don't have this, and this should be different, and why do I have to do this now? And then there's this other part that says, you know, just get shit done, mate. You know, just keep going. Don't stop, just keep going. But every time I stop, you know, I also have a reason to stop, because, okay, what to do next? Sometimes you have to stop until you know what to do next. But when I stop, I start to suffer. And the suffering is a necessary step in your own hero journey. So if you feel really depressed, you actually have the best motivation to move on. Because if you don't feel depressed, why would you change anything? You know, some people, they just aren't depressed enough. And that's why you can see in this kind of society, most people that start changing something are the ones that went through some kind of hardship. You know, people that suddenly got really sick. You know, maybe people that were drinking alcohol for years, and then suddenly their whole body just collapses, and then they say, now I'm going to change something. Or people who are suddenly, you know, all their relationships, they stopped, and then they changed something. And that was basically, roughly how it was with me. You know, everything failed. So I had to do something. And that's what you could say, you know, then the quest really started. And then you just, you know, you're holding on to straws, because it's just bits and pieces. I mean, you cannot see the whole picture yet. You have an idea or a vision of where your quest is going to lead you to a better life. It's like that, how's that movie called? With Littlefoot, these dinosaurs. And they're trying to find that land, that lush and green land with all these, you know, edible plants. You know, dinosaur Littlefoot, that's gonna get you to it. I don't know the name. Well, you only have the idea of that place, of your Garden Eden. You have an idea, an image in your mind or in your heart. And then you have to start making choices. And you have to weigh them. Almost like a scale, right? So you feel them out. You say, how does this feel? If I make this choice now, is it going to get me closer to my purpose? Is it going to get me closer to my happy place? Is it going to get me closer to my own personal heaven? Or is it going to get me further away from there? So let's say you are with a woman and you love her very much, or you are with a man and you love him very much, but you are afraid that he or she will betray you. And now you have this beautiful vision in your heart. You have been given a vision. That's how it usually works. You cannot just claim that for yourself. This is something that's been given to you as a present. And you either appreciate that present and you start taking it serious and working towards it, or you start sitting around and moping because it isn't there yet. Well, you cannot get to heaven unless you work for that. And heaven is a place right here. So you start going, and then you start making choices. So if you have had a vision of this beautiful family that you have with your partner, and you are afraid, you may start sabotaging it. So you start betraying your partner, and then that crashes because you didn't have the courage to push through and to say, you know, I love that man or I love that woman so much, I want to start a family with that person, and I'm prepared to let go of my desire to sleep with all kinds of other women. You know, I'm just gonna say, this is it now. And then you might start to feel trapped. You know, that's your fear. So you may look at why you feel trapped and all kinds of things. But in the end, it's your choice what your heaven is supposed to be. You know, what do you allow yourself? How high or how far does your aim reach, right? How far do you want to shoot that arrow? You know, and how big is the dragon that you want to slay? So you have to look at that also. Because some people, they want to be like other people. You know, maybe, you know, somebody thinks he wants to be like Gandhi. You know, maybe somebody thinks he wants to be like me. Oh, I also want to do art and music. You know, I don't really know if people like what I'm doing. I just know that I like what I'm doing. You know, it fulfills me. I like it. You know, I cannot expect that other people like it. They may like it. But I don't know that. So there might be people out there who think maybe they don't want to do the music I'm doing, but maybe they want to do the music they want to be doing. And maybe they want to write books and all that kind of stuff. But then you also have to look at what is. Do you really have a skill for writing books? Or do you just want to do it because it looks like it's something fun to do? Right? So if I look at books, there are certain books I cannot write. Simply because that's not how I work. I also cannot really shape a lot. I mean, I do work on my books, sure. But the way it works with me is I go there and then I have an idea of a book and then I fill myself with the content and then I just start writing. And it's a lot about feeling in which direction is the story going to go. Okay. Yeah, and then the book is done at one point. But I started writing books because I seemed to have a skill for that, and that was then part of my quest, right? That was what I was talking about with the Rubik's Cube. You know, you have certain centerpieces. That's your skills, right? So if there's a hero and he's really good at archery, but he thinks that being a swordsman would be much cooler, and then he might miss out on being a great archer because he would like things to be different, because to him, you know, swordsmen look really cool. So to you, maybe musicians might look really cool, but maybe you just can't make music. So I cannot make music like NF. I cannot make music like Madonna. I cannot make music like other people, because every time I try to make music, it's the stuff that you can listen to. You know, sometimes I try to make music like other people, and then I sit down and I start making a song, And what comes out of it is something totally different. Because I didn't plan that. But that's me, you know. It's like, I was talking about that image in that art is my passion. It's the previous one, live recording I did. And I said that somebody contacted me and asked me to do an image about a dog. And then I was actually doing that, but not the way they wanted it or something, I don't know. And you know, I wanted to make it look like really happy, because it was for a female person. And then I started thinking, what the fuck, that's, you know. So I started trusting my feeling again, and suddenly I liked the image. But it didn't really look like cute or anything. It was like, you know, how everything that I make looks like. It's a bit intense. There's a lot of male energy in there. You know, I don't do this kind of, oh, so cute, you know. I do boom, because that's how I feel. You know, that is who I am. That is, I'm being honest about who I am, and I'm showing myself in my art in the way that feels good to me, because my intuition is my guide on my quest towards my own personal heaven. And I can only be in heaven when I'm in love. And I can only be in love if I love what I'm doing, because I'm honest. So if I try to do something, but I actually hate it. So for example, I could sit down now and I could crochet hundreds of hats and sell them. And then I could say, yeah, I really like that. While actually I hate it. I would only do it because I think that's gonna get me money. But I wouldn't really enjoy that. Because I think if somebody wants to have a hat made from crochet, then they have to take that as a challenge and make it themselves. You know, that can be part of your quest. I want to learn how to make hats from crochet. That is a perfectly valid skill for a man, because it teaches you patience and perseverance and mental stability, and it's an active form of meditation. So that's what we are facing today. We are facing boredom. We are facing corruption. We are facing liars. I mean, I see a lot of people that create content for YouTube, and then they always sit in front of a bookshelf so that they look really knowledgeable. Yeah, but that says already something about them, because most of their knowledge is based on books. Most of my knowledge is based on feelings, because I feel sometimes, I'm like blind. So I feel myself. There's a really good movie, The Thief of Baghdad, from there are several versions of this, but there's one that's really nice. Let me just check that. It's from 1940, right? The Thief of Baghdad from 1940. It's a really nice movie. I mean, just look at that. It's from 1940. And the way they... Yeah, it's that one. I mean, the way they made it, it's just genius. I mean, the kind of special effects they used. I like that kind of stuff. So that's also part of the quest, to be true to who you are. So when I make my videos, I use very simple effects. I don't like this 3D animation. I like 2D animation, but I like making 2D images that give you a sense of depth, an image where you actually can look into. And I've learned to do that with my art. And that is something that feels good to me. And I tried doing 3D animation, but to me it doesn't work. I don't have a passion for it. It's too complicated. There are too many things. And I cannot say what's going to happen in the future, right? I cannot say maybe in 10 years I'm going to get into that. But at the moment, I feel really good about doing these kind of simple things. And right, there's also a difference. There's also a difference between goals people have. Like for me, it's a very, very important part of my life to be together with my wife, right? To find a way to make that happen. And that's a place in my heart. And that keeps me going, and that keeps me working. And that's something that is very important to me, right? And if you would say that to people, they would question it. They would say, how do you know she is it? Because my feeling tells me that. I've met her, I know it's her, and the only thing that would stop me from pursuing that dream is my fear. And I just can't do that anymore. I cannot lie to myself about the way I feel because I've practiced, right? So knowing who you are and what your path is a feeling. That's how you know. You know because it feels right. It feels right, and that's then you have to train your intuition. Because if you start on your hero's journey and you're constantly looking at your phone for directions, it ain't working. I used to use all these oracles and I used to look up all kinds of things on the internet, but at some point I just stopped because I wanted to go where my feeling was sending me. And that takes a lot of courage, but that's the stuff heroes are made of. You don't really ask questions, you just go. You just go and you trust your feeling and you're just doing what you like to do. And then as you get better at doing these things, you also have to be a bit careful because you don't want to turn out like Cristiano Ronaldo, because he just turns out to be an asshole in the end. Everybody says, oh, you're the best there is, and you get millions of euros or dollars or whatever. And then you start flattering yourself. Oh, I'm really good. I'm really sexy because I have a six-pack. That's just materialism. So that's another challenge. To stay true to how you feel, but also to always humble yourself to knowing that you could have never gotten to where you are without other people. So that's like people like maybe Cristiano Ronaldo, they think, I'm the one that's changing the game, right? Without me, nobody would win. I'm the only one. It's like, wow! It's like having a God complex. I'm God, I'm the best there is. But the truth is, who taught you? Who gave you life? Who was feeding you? With who did you train? Who were your friends? Because although I push my friends aside, or I said, I want nothing to do with you anymore, I still acknowledge that they helped me to get to where I am today. And so I couldn't produce content at the moment without having a computer and without having a camera in such a way. Right? So in the sense, I can hate the system, but at the moment I also have to acknowledge that the system is helping me to do what I want to do for whatever reason. So it's like living in a state of acceptance. This is how life is at the moment. I'm talking to you through a camera from possibly thousands of miles away. So another part of the quest is to accept the state of affairs. Which brings me back to your own sob story. I never had a father, or my father never played with me because he was working all the time, or blah, blah, blah. I actually don't think that fathers should really play a lot with children, because fathers have work to do and children need to play. So if I'm just playing all the time with my children, I don't want to be like them, because they're children. I'm supposed to give them stability. And you find a lot of men, that are still stuck in their teenage years because they never outgrew their trauma, because they never had a proper childhood. So they end up being 35-year-olds living alone in an apartment and playing with Lego toys, building like, I don't know, Star Wars, the Death Star. That's like being stuck in your teenage years. You never outgrew this. I want to play. So you don't have courage, you don't have balls, and you lack the stamina to pull your own weight. And so you're doing all this. To me, it's just like really meaningless stuff. You have no purpose in life. You have no direction. Otherwise, why would you spend your days playing with Lego when you could be out there living, right? You could be out there living. You could be out there chasing the love of your life. You could be out there, chasing the version of yourself that's like a barbarian, but like a gentle barbarian, right? You could be chasing the version of yourself that knows how to cook, that knows how to paint, that knows how to do photography, that knows how to slackline, that knows how to hike, and that knows how to do all these things by him or herself. Because that is the true challenge, is to do these things alone. That you're not running around. I sometimes see people that go cycling. And then they go cycling in groups because they don't like to cycle alone. And then you hear how they're just picking on each other. And some people, they call it, oh, you're too fat to get up the hill. Why do you spend time with such people? Why don't you just do it alone? Because they're afraid. And they lack the courage, because they think if I'm doing things alone, I'm a weirdo. Because that's the feeling this society gives you. They give you the feeling that if you spend time on your own, that you're weird. But you know what the truth is? Why they say that you're weird? Because they're afraid to be alone. They cannot be alone. For them it's impossible. So for them it's easier to say that you're weird than to accept that you just want to spend time on your own, because they actually take it personal, right? Because you don't mingle with them. You don't mingle with them, and then they find you weird because they don't know where to place you, right? I live with people. I don't talk to them anymore. I do like sign language, but when I go to my room, they hear me speak. That's a bit weird, isn't it? But I just accept that, because I just don't want to talk to them anymore, because it's pointless. It's just words, it's just stuff. I want to talk to people who want to change. I don't want to talk to people who are okay with just the way things are, right? I don't want to talk to people who just sit around every day watching TV, the same shows for the past 10 years. I don't want to talk to these people. I don't want to talk to people who have a dog that they can patronize and throw sticks for. I want to talk to people who want to go out there and figure out what their purpose is in life. I want to talk to people who really want to outgrow themselves, who want to get shit done, who want to change for themselves, but also for humanity, because we need real men and we need real women. We need real parents so that we can raise true children. But that's why we have to start with the parents. We have to start with the people who still want to be parents. Now we have to tell them, this is what you can do. First, sort out your own life. Rise above your own trauma and your own depression and everything that makes you feel angry and miserable and shit, And you have to really work yourself out of this. And once you've done that, once you've managed to rise above, right, as a man, your seed is starting the family. Your seed in the womb of a woman. It's you who channels the energy, right? Like this. It's you who channels the energy from the root up. You are the connection from earth to the heaven. And you center yourself in your heart. And that's how you know what to do. And you use your third eye vision to gather visions of where you must go. And then you hold these visions in your heart. And then you follow your intuition. And you do everything your feeling tells you to do to get there. I did not ask a lot of questions. I just did things. You know, when my feeling was telling me, go, do this, go that, do that, I don't know, eat now and then make content, I just did it. Even though it felt insane, I just did it. And I've been working my ass off to be acknowledged. Because that's what I want. I want people to realize that I have something to say, but for that you first have to show it. Because if you sit around saying, I want to do that, well, you can say that for the rest of your life, but unless you start doing it, you're just gonna keep sitting there in the same place and you're gonna say it. So words are turds, are birds, are nothing. You know, that's why I don't talk to people who cannot listen. I talk to people who want to take the time to listen to what I have to say. I'm not here to listen to what you have to say because I'm hearing that anyway, right? I'm picking that up. I hear voices from everywhere, right? It's like I just have to open my spirit and open my heart and I hear the suffering of the world. And if you want to outgrow that, you have to learn to deal with this. There is a lot of suffering in the world and you can learn how to transform that. And that is the quest, to find out what makes you vibrate on a higher level. That is when they say people like Hercules, you know, they were like half God. Well, they just accepted the source of energy that is within them and used its power, or were allowed to use the power to do the deeds that they came here to do. So to other people, what I'm doing, for instance, maybe looks like it's crazy, or it looks like, you know, how is he doing that? You know, how do you maintain so many channels? How do you write books, make images, talk, have a podcast, make music, but all in your own way? How do you do that for such a long period of time? Well, I'm doing it because I'm channeling. You know, I just acknowledge that I can do these things, so why would I not do them? Right? So that's just how it is. Okay. But I also have to sometimes make sacrifices. You know, at the moment my focus is on getting stuff done. So right now I want to make a lot of live recordings, so I don't have that much time to do other things, right? So it's hard for me at the moment to also make music because I'm saving my energy or my attention to do these recordings. And then to also make music at the same time is like quite a stretch, especially because there are already more than 20 albums out there, right? So right now I just want to reach out to people, and the best way that I see how I can do that at the moment is by just talking. Because I don't need a script, I'm just talking. And sense makes itself through the person that is listening to what I'm saying. You know, everybody gets something else out of what I'm saying. You know, some people are listening to this and they actually have a father, and then there's others that have none. And then there's some that really like their father, and then there's one that they don't like. So it's different for everybody, right? Everybody gets a different message, but everybody gets what they came here to get, right? If you want to be angry at me because, you know, I tap into your trauma, well, then don't be angry at me. Acknowledge that there is anger in you and ask yourself why you're so angry, and then look at the anger and understand it and sit with it and do something with it. Paint it, you know, that's what I do. If I'm angry, I paint. If I'm angry, I write. If I'm angry, I make an image. And the same I do with sadness and all that kind of stuff. And that is then the quest to freedom, to figure out how to channel all these negative emotions that are simply there in this kind of society. Because you're doing it as much for yourself as you're doing it for others. And that's it.